So here we are at today's cutesy bridge. It's more like a mush pond than anything. I hope no one has to get water there. That is so muddy. Wow. Oh, water looks good, but it is really mucky. Oh, there's a spot to get water right there. In fact, there's good flow right there if you want water. Okay, that last clip, which hopefully will end up in the video, in the pine forest, that's actually the top of, spelled like UNAKA mountain. And there were absolutely no views there because you're in a pine forest. And I just looked at AWOL, and AWOL even says it's a pine forest. And now we're back in the normal forest. This is, after you come down off of that mountain, you go up, very quickly go up another little short mountain. And I think this is I think I'm still coming down that mountain. I don't know. I came down for a while and then got some flat area, and then still seems to be descending a little bit here. The climb up, obviously the climb going north up of Unica Mountain was, it had switchbacks and stuff, so I think it was a 1,000-foot climb, maybe a little bit more, but it had good switchbacks. So if you got a good set of trail legs on you, you'll just blow right up and down that one. Let me talk about section hiking. I guess once you start at Springer and you end, you turn yourself into a section hiker. But last year, I don't know if I said this before, last year I hiked from Springer Mountain to Irwin, and then went home, and then came back up to Waynesboro and hiked from Waynesboro through the Shenandoah National Park up to Harper's Ferry. And I think I never really sat down and added the miles up. I think that's roughly about 500 miles total. So I did 500 miles last year. And I'm going to be out here for 4 to 5 weeks this year if I don't crash and burn. And in one of my favorite ER's Early Risers videos, talked about the difference between through hiking and section hiking, and how each of them has its own little problems. And at least with section hiking, the two biggest problems are, one, you have to get back and forth the trail. Obviously, you know that if you're through hiking, because you've had to get here and you have to get off. But the trail's really set up to get people to Springer Mountain, so it's very easy to get there. You can fly into Atlanta, you can take a bus to the bus station. Everybody runs shuttles out there, so it's pretty simple to, in relative terms, I should say, because nothing's simple. In relative terms, it's pretty simple to get there. It's just a matter of how much money you want to spend and all that kind of stuff, but there's no problem getting there. When you start, and for those of you through hiking that, go home for somebody's graduation or somebody's wedding or whatever, when you try to get home, it's a pain in the butt, because the rest of the trail is not really set up to deliver people to the trail or get them off the trail. And so it's a real pain, and quite expensive, actually. So that's probably the biggest hurdle for section hikers, is just that. Now, obviously, if you're section hiking and you live in the area, it becomes a much simpler exercise. But for someone like me that lives out in Colorado, it's a pain. And then, of course, the other thing that's the pain is that when you leave the trail, well, let's start at the beginning. When you start the trail, usually that first week or two, you're not exactly, the trail's hurting you more than you're hurting it. And, your legs hurt, your calves hurt, your knees hurt, you get all the blisters. And if you're through hiking, hopefully sooner or later, that stuff all gets worked out. For some people, they struggle for days and days and weeks just trying to get the right pair of shoes. trying to get the right backpack. But I'd say for most people, you know, they wear the shoes they came out with, they wear the backpack they came out with, they may switch out a couple things, you know, when they hit the NOC outfitter and that kind of stuff, or even the outfitter in hot springs. But for the most part, they go with what they've got, and they typically, if anything, they divest themselves of some of the stuff they brought that they really don't need and don't need to carry. And so that's oops. Well, I'm going to break out here and say, yeah, I usually don't film going downhill because I trip, but I am now because I don't see any roots and rocks, and the grade's not too bad. Okay, so at any rate, you know, you've got your stuff, you're ready to go, and assuming you don't go anywhere, it's an easy, oh, here's the shelter right here. It's an easy hike, you know, well, after a couple weeks, it's an easy hike, once you get your equipment stuff figured out. If you section hike, you go through that every time you come back out, and it doesn't really matter how long you leave. It doesn't matter whether you leave for a month, 3 months, or a year. When you come back, it's like you're starting all over. First couple days out, you feel like someone beat the crap out of your legs. And it takes you a week or two before you start to feel comfortable. And that's the real downside of section hiking, is that you're constantly having to get yourself acclimated to the trail, and then leave and come back and do it all over again. And so, you know, with thru hikers, as long as you don't leave for too long, you know, once you kind of get that first couple weeks under your belt, and then maybe the next couple weeks building up some distance, you know, you're probably up there doing 20s by the time you hit, you know, Northern Virginia, where section hikers are suffering through getting themselves reacclimated every time they come out. And I think that's probably the two biggest problems, is just getting here, getting back, and then expense, and then the reacclimation of back to the trail. All right, well, here's there's no name on it, so I don't know what it is. What's the name of this shelter?
Cherry Gap.
Cherry Gap. This would be Cherry Gap Shelter, and if you don't mind that I'm filming, that's what's that?
If I don't mind you filming, no
Yeah.
problem.
Okay, well then your name is?
Tom.
Tom. Hi, Tom.
Trail name is Hoot.
Hoot. Well, that means you're a lot of fun to be with.
That means my last name is Gibson, and it's an old silent movie.
Oh.
Cowboy star, Hoot Gibson, but nobody knows that.
I don't know that either.
Except those older guys.
Yeah. Well, I'm an older guy, so.